Hello, 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 my friends, and welcome to Nerdy Nebula Podcast. I'm the main host, Nicholas W. Fuller, and I'm joined tonight by one of my co-hosts, ZB Steele, who, of course, everyone knows as the sibling of the renowned romance writer Danielle Steele. Thank you for being here, ZB Steele.
Before we move on, it is funny. If you look up ZB on Goodreads, the top result is a book called Sex Ed by ZB Holler, I think. So that's my next route.
There you go. Just romance and sex ed. Perfect. And of course, it's not just the two. Although, wait. Before I go on, ZB, you've been doing some work. You got some stuff going on. You had a pretty good month a little bit ago, and like we're working on the Rising Gale release. Right? It's exciting times for Mr. ZB Steele, right?
I got some exciting stuff cooking up this summer. Yeah, pretty decent month. Yeah, nothing. This sounds a little egotistical, but like, it's only slightly above average.
I mean, but well, it feels like a little bit of a milestone, but I get you. All right, but I
No,
did
it's not
I
the first time I've cracked any of those numbers. Always an
well,
honor,
shit.
for sure. Always appreciative, always an honor. But yeah, I think I average like 925 a month. So breaking
Goddamn.
1,000 is not like crazy, but
Yeah.
it is
Okay.
awesome.
Okay. And did I hear something about maybe like did I hear a rumor about
We'll have to edit that out because that's not out yet. That's not
or,
official yet.
well, we can edit it out if we need to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. But enough about ZB. We do have a much more interesting guest tonight. Mr. Jeremy Szal. How you doing, Jeremy?
I'm very good, Nicholas. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It's a delight to talk with you all the way from Australia.
Yeah, it is a pleasure. Quite the pleasure, sir.
So, for anyone that doesn't know Jeremy, he started, I guess, as an editor with Starship Sofa, and you started there when you were 19 years old, which is incredible. You were doing short stories, I guess, at the time, and continued kind of doing short stories. You went to school for creative writing, but instead of paying attention to the lame classes, you were actually signing contracts to get your shorts published, which is amazing. What a baller move. I love it. Um, yeah, and you have 40 different short stories published right now, which is also amazing. Or is it over 40 at this point?
It's probably over 40. But I like some of like there's at least 10 of them that are only like I think 1,000 words long, like they're with Nature magazine. Thousand, so like at least more than 10. So I mean like so I lose that's what I'm saying, I lose track because there are quite a few.
I just wrote a 100 word story, and like that was a bit of a challenge to make it fit. So we're not gonna like discount them just because they're a
No,
little
no, no.
short. All
I'm
right?
not
No.
discounting it. I'm just saying that that's why I sometimes lose track, that's all.
Yeah.
Not any of my work.
So and also many like multiple of your short stories are translated into multiple languages, which is super cool and definitely something that I want to discuss a little bit. Um, But of course, the big thing that's kind of a big deal for you right now, Mr. Zoll, is that you just finished the sci-fi trilogy of full-length novels that you've been working on for a hot minute. That's got to feel pretty good.
Yeah, it does. Wolfskin came out last week, and I did at an event a couple of days ago for the book. I did my first signing for it, which is
Nice.
really incredible. I don't actually have my own copies yet, so I can't show off all three. But yeah, it is the common saga that began with Stormblood has complete and ends with Wolfskin, and yeah, I'm very very happy that it's out in the world.
Nice. Yeah. Super sick. We're definitely going to talk a fair bit about Wolfskin. I'm definitely going to like nerd out because the more I'm hearing about it, the more I'm like, ooh. But I do want to get into talking about short stories first because I think this is really fascinating. And your history and background and experience with short stories is really cool. Not only because you've written a bunch, but you've also like have a bunch in different markets that I didn't even realize were markets. And you've been an editor for a speculative fiction podcast, which is also super cool. So, first question for you, Jeremy. You've published over 40 short stories right now. Again, I think that's rad. How do you feel that shorts fit into a modern career as for a writer?
Well, look, I actually think this is a probably painful way to start, but I think they are less and less relevant to someone who wants to be a novelist. I'm not saying they're irrelevant for writers. I don't think that at all. But I think that you see some people, some people from the, let's just say the older generation will talk about how, you sell a bunch of short stories, you work your way up, then you publish a novel. And that is you like, even George R. R. Martin on his blog says that that's how it's done. And I'm sorry, but he's dead wrong. It's not even I think he's dead wrong. He is dead wrong. Like that is not the way that it works these days. If you want to write short stories, then that's great, and it's a great opportunity, and you get to flex your muscles, and you get to get your name out there. But there are plenty of writers who I've never actually sold a novel, like Ted Chiang, who wrote, Story of Your Life that became Arrival. He's more famous than I'll ever be. But the fact is that
Easy there.
he's not yet published a novel, whether it's because he doesn't want to, or I would think it would be strange for for him to be unable to. I think he would be able to, but for whatever reason, he hasn't published a novel. So it wasn't a means to an end. It clearly was not a means to an end for him. The short stories were the end. And there's plenty of writers whose debut work was a novel.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
and I don't really think that short stories actually make that much difference. I think that the people who do read them are in a very, 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 very different market, and also are wanting very, very different things. I think that short stories are things that you read if you want a quick emotional punch to the gut, like an emotional feeling. I don't care how you do it, but break my heart in 4,000, 5,000 words, right? A novel is about longevity. It's about immersion. It's not supposed to be quick cut feeling. You're supposed to sink into it, let it breathe it. And so I personally think that long form is my preferred format, and I think it's what most people do prefer as well. I don't really think that short stories have the staying power that they once did in the 70s and 80s, and they absolutely did. Once upon a time, you could make a living out of writing short stories. Now you can't because they were almost 100 years ago, people getting paid the same rates as we are today, but without inflation. So you could very much make a living off, selling a short story for $500 or whatever. Not so much now, even if you did get $500, which is quite a lot for a short story.
Right.
Yeah,
I do
so
have a
I,
theory on that actually, where it's like I think back in the day, right? The magazines, like the pulp magazines and all that, that was one of the main and only ways to get fantasy. And people fucking love fantasy and sci-fi. Now there's
yeah,
Kindle Unlimited, there's millions of fantasy books, so those people are gravitating towards novels and Kindle Unlimited, because why wouldn't they?
yeah. Yeah, and you have a lot more range. You can pick what you want as well. So yeah, like I definitely think that the short story markets had staying power, and there are certainly markets that move that get attention. But I don't think that you need to write them in order to be a novelist. You certainly don't. If you don't like writing them, then I definitely don't think that you have to. I I never short stories were never really my thing. I did them because it got my name out there and because I thought it's good practice, right? But now that I'm a novelist, a published novelist, that's where my primary focus is. I'll do short stories on the side as a little palate cleanser and to as a refresher, but they will never be my primary focus.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. I mean, like to the point that you were making is you can't really make a career out of them, right? So like even if you wanted it to be your focus, it kind of, you know.
I mean, I'll say this: I don't mind sharing numbers. It's a little bit different because this is a novella instead of a short story. But my novella has about two-thirds the amount of ratings that the full novel does, which is pretty good, right? Like that means it's almost as popular, a little bit close. It's made 7% of what the full novel has made. So if you're looking to
Mhm.
make a career out of writing, short stories and novellas are good to get your name out there, good for visibility. They are awful for money, I think. I don't really. This is a little bit of an insensitive question, but how much money can you make from short stories these days?
I think, look, I've been invited to a few anthologies. Like I'm invited to one recently, and it's 10 cents a word, and a cap of like about 7,000 words. That's 700 USD. And that's not a small amount. If I had that every week, that would be some considerable money. But I'm not getting that every week. This is the only one I've had this year so far. And a lot of magazines like they'll publish 10 cents a word, 11 cents, 13 cents or whatever, but a lot of them will be publishing you around 5,000 words. Longer if you're lucky. There's only like something like Asimov's or fantasy and science fiction. There's only one novella slot, if that. There's two novelette slots sometimes, but the rest are short story slots. So the longer your story is, the more they have to pay you, and so the better it has to be. So, yeah, I don't think that if you're going to be breaking into that market, I don't think I don't think anyone is really writing for money, to be quite frankly. But I think in short stories, you have to be loony to try and make a bank on that. It's good beer money though, occasionally.
With that though, like, is that the entirety of the money that you'll ever get, or is that kind of like an advance and you'll get royalties on it too,
No
or
royalties,
no?
no. Just
Okay,
that's it. That's
yeah,
it.
interesting. Yeah, I got asked to do an anthology with some friends, but there's no money up front. It's just like, we're like, well, we're gonna do it on Kickstarter, and we'll kind of share what money we make. We'll see what happens, So that's a
That's
I don't think
interesting.
that's a bad strategy these days.
yeah.
I see Kickstarters make 30K, 50K sometimes, like with just anthology money.
Yeah, but how much what percentage of that are you getting?
Yeah, divide that by 16 or whatever.
Yeah,
Starts getting a little
yeah.
grim, but not
There's a
bad
few
for
of
short
us, and there's
story.
going to be expenses. Yeah, we'll see. It's more definitely more of an exposure thing at this point. So interesting. As we're kind of talking about the shorts, though, you've sold a bunch, you've been translated a bunch. I thought I knew a little bit about, I mean, most of the kind of major spec fic short story publishers out there, like Uncanny, Clark's World, Asimov's, Analog, Lightspeed. Those ones are names that I was familiar with. I thought, these are most of the names that I'm kind of hearing in Hugo. And then you were mentioning ones that I had never heard of. So one of the places that you've like published and worked with, well, some of them are Nature Magazine, I guess, and Starship Sofa, which again I hadn't heard of. So I'm curious if those are just ones that the reason I hadn't heard of them is because they're Australian, or maybe I'm just not in touch enough. Or
Nature magazine published like I'm pretty sure they published Einstein. They're connected to Macmillan. They published what's his name? God,
okay,
died recently. There was a there was a movie about him. The
Oppenheimer?
sorry, no, not
Oppenheimer?
Oppenheimer, not Oppenheimer. The other guy. He was disabled. He was cerebral palsy.
Stephen Hawking.
Stephen Hawking. Yeah, they published it. Like it was even in the movie Theory of Everything that they showed that he was published in Nature.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
the
okay.
science magazines. They
Yeah,
just
that
have
one all right, right. That one I am familiar with. All right, my bad. Like I just thought it was different from that because it was publishing your sci-fi.
yeah, no. They publish one short story at the end of every issue.
Oh, really?
The
I did
science
not
magazines.
know
Yeah.
that. Okay, that's really rad. Okay, but another one that you've been translated into Chinese and been published in Chinese publications, and like you had said in a different podcast that this particular like Chinese publication is bigger than all the other markets for short form sci-fi combined, and
Yep.
that blew my mind. Like so,
So this is what they look like. Science fiction world is what they look like.
okay, cool,
So they basically
interesting.
like this is my publisher. They published a three body problem. They're also the people that
Oh,
flew me out to Chengdu for China Worldcon. So all
yeah,
expenses paid, which I was not expecting to be happen ever. But yeah, like they publish like full illustrations and everything as well. They're
wow,
incredibly well produced. Yeah, basically they have a coverage. Basically, I think they have a circulation. They have something like 300,000 circulation, and on average, they say that it gets shared between three to four people each. So yeah, a circulation of over a million copies for each issue, and and they have basically a chokehold on the Chinese science fiction market because they're the dominant market. There's another one that I've just sold a story to called 8 Light Minutes, and they also have a really strong push. Like they publish anthologies over there as well, and they're publishing like they're translating people like Greg Egan and Adrian Tchaikovsky and people like that as well. But yeah, basically they sell basically they have a coverage of over about a million readers. But I mean, you have to understand that in China there are 1.4 billion people.
yeah,
So
yeah. A million is nothing, right?
yeah. And the difference is though, and I find this the most interesting thing, is that unlike in the US or in the with the Western society where we basically view, the big people view science fiction as the thing that makes money and with through Disney, right? Or just make believe, right? We just go that's what the general public's consensus is. Over there in China, it's very lauded. It's viewed as a way to get students interested in STEM, so science and engineering and physics and biochemistry. They'll go and they'll show like a movie like Interstellar, and they'll say, "What does it teach us about human integrity, engineering, and science, and other life forms and other planets, and relativity and that sort of thing?" And so that's how they get funding for it. and that's why they get this stuff gets studied in universities. Like my short stories have been studied in universities, and I can't even believe it. Like I've
Yeah.
just one time someone linked me with it, and I just looked it up, and apparently there's like an article that one of my short stories that they translated fully in Chinese, had full illustrations, and they showed screenshots of them all on the Chinese equivalent of Zoom, all gathered around looking at the story and the teacher talking about it. And I was like, what is this? Is surreal.
Right.
This is mental.
Yeah,
Especially as
that's
the story
extremely
took me
cool.
like an hour to wrote it took the story took me an hour to write in a bar, an hour or two to write in a bar. So I was really uh both pleased and bewildered by that. But it's something that they take they're very full on about and take it very seriously.
They're studying my bar rant. What is going on? Like,
So on
that's
that
wild.
front, I did see a quote from Gene Wolfe today where he was saying, "I hope sci-fi and fantasy actually never is considered a legitimate genre in America because it incentivizes kids to read because it's considered like a dirty thing almost." I don't think that's true. I don't think that is what we want, but I'm curious what your take is on that.
So he's saying that he hopes it's never taken seriously.
Yeah, he hopes that it
But
stays in
because
the,
it's like forbidden fruit, and
yes.
Yeah,
it's
yeah, I see, I
right,
see. That's the
right,
cool thing. I mean, look,
right.
honestly, even when I was in university, I was told, oh, you may not partake in this speculative genre nonsense. You will engage in literary circles only. And it was like they wanted to keep, basically anything with commercial success was frowned upon, which is ironic considering that we were studying Cormac McCarthy and Toni Morrison and Salman Rushdie. So I'm not too sure what happened there. But yeah, basically, yeah, I definitely see that point. It is kind of like the thing that is looked down upon. And look, even in China, it's still, not everyone obviously takes it seriously. I mean, like I even government institutions, like I know this for a fact, like Beijing, like they don't care. They just know that it's making them money. But that they just don't care about it. That's why there's a lot of freedom of expression when it comes to science fiction. And it was the same in the
Mm.
Soviet era as well. Like writers in science fiction could make plenty of analogies and very timely metaphors. But they got away with it because the bad guys were not under the red sickle and hammer. They have happened to be the aliens who and stuff like that. So there are plenty of ways to get around it. It's just a matter of how it's done. But yeah, I do think that yeah, it's I mean obviously I'm happy for anyone to be engaged with it, but I don't think it'll ever be taken as seriously as literary fiction is. Although, I think the general public is, coming around to it. I mean, we had like what, 23, 30 Marvel films in a row. I'm pretty sure we won that war.
Yeah, right. Not to mention, we're right on as we're recording, we're right on the heels of the opening weekend of Project Hail Mary, which is done numbers. Um, but that's really interesting. Again, like you're accessing these different markets, you're getting translated. What does that process look like from the perspective of an author of short stories? Like, because my understanding with a novel, your agent would be kind of shopping translations and that sort of thing. But I don't think that's happening for you with shorts, is it?
No, no, my agent doesn't do that. I was selling shorts long before I got an agent, and yeah,
Hmm.
I'll basically go to these different markets and I'll talk to them and I'll make connections and then I'll email them and say, hey, I've got something. And there are plenty of markets that allow you to do so online. But yeah, but some of them are
Interesting.
harder to get in contact with others than others. Put this in perspective. I cannot break into the Japanese language market. I speak Japanese. I know people who know the editor personally, not just worked with him, know him personally and have their email, and I've not been able to make contact.
Why
Absolutely
is
nothing.
that?
Because
Do you know,
Japan is
like, do you know if
so
there's a root
small.
cause for that?
Sorry?
Do you know if there's a root cause for that?
Because of the way Japan is very closed circuit and it's very much things are done the way we say they are done and the way we have always done them. Like if you send basically Japan, send them something that they didn't ask for, they won't even know what they'll be like. I don't know what to do with this. I didn't request it from you. What do I do with this? Just put it aside before it grows. Kill it with fire. Um, Japan is very much, conservative in that way, whereas China, ironically, is very interested in having writers come on and, like, they want to make inroads, they want to publish international writers, they want to do a cultural exchange. They really, really want, they're hungry for stories. So that's the difference. But what I'm just trying to demonstrate that is there's degrees of difficulties with each language and
Sure.
each market, and some of them
Sure.
are very, very hard.
Sure. Yeah. No, of course. Like not every market is going to be hungry like this Chinese market. Did you because you I think you know a little bit of Chinese also, is that right?
I can read it, some of it
Okay.
because I speak Japanese, so I can read some of the symbols, but I I probably know about 10 words max in Chinese.
Okay. So then when you were reaching out to Chinese, I assume that in that case that your communication was in English.
Yeah, they speak English.
Okay.
Generally, like
Yeah.
yeah, they speak English better than they think they do as well. They downplay it, but they do speak English quite well.
Word. That's fascinating. All right. Interesting. Interesting. So again, we've been talking about shorts. I kind of hinted at a little bit of a Starship Sofa. Why don't we give the audience, if you can, please, Jeremy, anyone that's not familiar with your long resume, please go ahead and share. Again, you started with Starship Sofa while you were 19, and you're still kind of a little bit younger than me, you young gun. Like, but you've done so much. So tell us about it.
Yeah, so you mean like just in general, or just talk about Starship so far?
No, no, like give us all the goods,
All
everything.
right, yeah. So basically, yeah, the as I said, the main thing that I've been working on is the Common series, as you said, like a base dark space opera about the DNA of an extinct alien race that gets used as a drug that makes people get high on violence and aggression. It's starts with Stormblood, and the two sequels are Blind Space and Wolfskin, which has just come out this week or last week. They're basically fans of Red Rising and Mass Effect and Altered Carbon. That's very much the intersection of where my books sit, is very much the crossroads of all those three properties. Yeah, as you said, published 40 short stories or so, been translated into I think 17 languages. I just got Turkish the other day. Someone came to me and I signed a contract for a Turkish anthology the other day, which was very, very cool. Um, and they came to me as well, so which was very unexpected. But as for the editing stuff that I was doing, so with Starship Sofa, we were the first podcast to win the Hugo Award. Not when I wasn't editing at the time. This was long before I came on board. I came on board sometime after, like, 2013, 14, started editing it. And basically what we do is every single week we play a short story, and that short story, in audio. So I would go out and I would reach out to authors, including, George R. R. Martin and Harlan Ellison and William Gibson, Robin Hobb, people like that. And I would say, hey, we'd like to buy the audio rights for your short story, non-exclusive rights. We'll pay you this much. Can we have it? And 98% of people said yes, unequivocally. They said absolutely yes. Yeah, the short story for George R. R. Martin that we got, it was published in the 70s and was out of print and had never been reprinted ever. And so we had to dig up like an actual copy of the collection that it came in, and sent that off to the narrator. So we revived an ancient story that was never online before that point. So that was
An
George was
ancient
really pleased.
tome. Yeah.
Ancient
Yeah.
tome in the long lost 70s. Just
Yeah, right.
yeah,
Yeah. Exactly.
for my time.
Yeah.
Yeah, George was really pleased with that, which was really, really cool. Yeah, that's what we did every single week, and I was doing that while at university, learning not too much in some of those classes. But I did learn a lot because I had the time to go off and do these other things. And I learned a lot about, reaching out, the production process, and I made a lot of contacts, and to people who still know me this day from for reprinting the works or publishing them. And I also, I think, published about 2 dozen, 3 dozen original short stories as well, like not just reprints. Like I actually like got new stories and worked with the authors to make them right in some cases, because like I just wanted some revision. So it showed me a lot about the whole process, and I think that for my own writing, it just showed me, okay, what makes a good story. How do you open with a banger line? How do you, finish well? How do you continue getting the reader on? There are things that will, will trip someone up, and there are things that also, will make them compel them to continue reading, even if they aren't the genre is really not their thing. If the voice works, then you can win them over. It was things like that I got to learn how to do.
Nice.
Yeah, that's extremely cool. So, who would you say is your favorite person that you've worked with, and you'll work with them again and again for that type of stuff, the short stories and all that?
God, I mean, there was like I was editing for 6 years, and we played sometimes two stories a week. God, it's very, very hard to say. I think 95% of people were like very easy to work with. I mean, I'd love to work with George Martin again. I mean, that was a privilege and an honor. Alan Ellison, that was something else because I had to call him up on the phone to ask his permission to if we could tell the story. And if you know anything about Harlan Ellison, you know that he was a personality, like the sort of person that would mail dead gophers to people he didn't like, publishers he didn't like, and yeah, and stuff like that. Like, yeah, yeah, I
How
mean,
many
he
dead
even
gophers do you have?
sorry,
How many dead gophers do you have now?
uh, none because he liked me very much, ZB. No, he also, yeah, he did tell me at the end that if I gave the phone number out to anyone, he'd come to my house, nail my dog's head to the wall, and kill me. But yeah, but I said, yeah, that's the sort of person he was.
Yeah.
He's infamous. Like, there's a whole, yeah. He also created like the anthology Dangerous Visions, which was probably the most, famous anthology of all time, as well, which is really, really cool. Anyway, he was very interesting to work with, and just being able to talk with him was quite fun. Yeah, he did
Nice.
sign off with saying hello. Yeah, you take care, kiddo. So not complete evil bastard. Then he's dead now. He's dead now, so I can say whatever I want about him. Uh, um,
Oh,
yeah,
you're getting a
Yeah.
gopher from the grave. That's all I know.
Right.
I do have a quick question. I don't know if we're a little out of sync now because I have one more question about shorts. All right, so Jeremy, you have 40 shorts, 40 plus. Do you have a favorite? And if so, does it change? Like is like Monday like, oh, story 13 was really cool, and then Tuesday like, no, story 17 was sick.
it's a good question, actually. Sometimes, yeah, sometimes it does. I think that there's one. I actually would have to look it up to get all the names of it. There's one short story that seems to have it's been reprinted into Spanish, Chinese, and Arabic, called the Galaxy and French as well. The Galaxy's Cube, which did pretty well. Like it was one of the. It was probably the short story I wrote where I leveled up. Like I was like, I finished it and I was like, okay, this is good. Like this is this. I've got something here, and I knew
Nice.
that I'd done well with it. There's another short story of mine called "A Love Like Bruises," which is usually not my thing. It's just an alien and a person sitting in a room talking, and the things get more and more unhinged from there. It's like it's probably the most high concept thing I've ever done, but it's also been translated and it's done pretty well. But there are some other short stories that I really really like. Like there's one called it's a novella called "Screaming Blue." It's like set in the world of the common. I really like that one. It was a totally new voice, totally different type of character. So yeah, it does change. It does change, but I would say I do have a carousel of about three to four to five that I think that are particularly good. And there are one or two that I
Nice.
think don't get enough love. But
Mm.
that it is what it is with short fiction.
Tell me the unsung hero short story, the one or two that don't get enough love. So the people watching.
There's one called Beneath a Bicentennial Moon. It's in the collection Broken Stars. I mean, all the good short stories are in Broken Stars.
Nice.
I'd say that yeah, like it's a basically like a John Carter-esque setting, but with a female protagonist. And I thought talks a lot about religious dogma and faith and political propaganda and how can become indoctrinated basically by your own upbringing, and that sort of and it can obscure you and can blind you to prejudice, and that sort of stuff. So I thought it was, and it also has, four-armed, green-skinned alien monsters and plasma rifles. So you get
As you
both,
do.
as you do,
As you
you
do.
get
Right.
both.
Right. Nice.
So, all right, so the difference in writing shorts and novels, because now you're this very successful published novelist who has an agent. You're gorgeous. You're doing extremely well.
Oh,
What's
behave.
um what's the biggest difference in writing a short versus a novel, other than the length, obviously, like the effort and the drive versus passion kind of elements. What are some of the big differences that you've noticed?
Well, I think for a novel, you have to be able to sustain it, right? And short story can be read and written within 1 to 2 sittings, right? But with a novel, it's something that you have to sustain and you have to have ebbs and flows. So you can't have page one be an action scene and then page 350, the last one, this like, non-stop action, the entire, like, every single page, right? You have to be able to have, the action scene, then a little bit slower, then you have an action scene, and then you have a dialogue, then you have, a scene where, people just talk or people just recuperate, or you have like sometimes you're showing the mundane, right? Someone getting out of bed for, or cooking breakfast for half a page. You can't have that in a short story, not really. Every word has to count. There's no subplots, there's no side quests. Everything has to be driving towards this one goal, and that goal is the central emotion or it's the central feeling that you want the reader to have by the end of the work. And it's usually very like singular, not in the sense that it's one note, but it's very driven. Like, this is the core of what I'm trying to say, right? Say multiple things in multiple different ways at multiple points. And so, you can have you have a lot more freedom with a novel, and that's just, for length, in terms of like the writing and everything like that. But short stories, you are usually limited to a very limited, very small amount of words and plots and characters, and the space in which you get to tell a story. I mean, I don't really like, there are plenty of stories that I've written in short form. I couldn't write them in a novel. I couldn't sustain it. But at the same time, there's no way in hell I could tell my novels. I could condense that into a short story. No way, and I wouldn't want to. So they're very different beasts, and that's why when I was reading a lot of fiction, I could tell the stories that were just condensed novels, and I knew that they weren't that good. And that's what actually how I improved my craft immensely, was when I stopped trying to do that. I stopped trying to tell a novel length work in just a short story form. When I started realizing that short stories run at a very different speed. Um,
And do you have a preference? Like, which one do you enjoy more?
Novels, for sure, 100%. 100%. Although when I do write novels, I do enjoy the fact that I get to have a bit of a palette cleanser. I get to, write a different character, a different voice, write at a different speed. I as a ancillary thing. But I, think of it like an entree, or like, let's just a side dish. But I would never have that side dish as a main meal.
And Nicholas, I got one more that just jumped to mind real quick.
You're
So
good.
imposter syndrome, where you feel like a fraud and you feel like a total dumbass because did you have that really bad because you did all this editing for these super famous, polished, were you comparing yourself to their works and did you have to deal with imposter syndrome for
Well,
both
yeah.
shorts and for novels?
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, everyone gets it. I mean, look, I think back then I didn't know my stuff was good. I know that my stuff is good because I do, or at least I think that I think it is. Because I've been published with Gallant, and I've worked with an editor, and I've had blurbs, and I've talked to people about this. Some people have told me so. But at the same time, there's always someone in me that thinks like, okay, did I fake it? Was this a fluke? Can I do it again? And I think that's also imposter syndrome. Did I managed to pull it off once or twice, but can I do this again? Is this, am I going to be able to pull this off? And back then when I was, it's mega intimidated, even like talking to George R. R. Martin, like, I was 19 at the time. I was like, I didn't even know what to say. Like, how do I even say, like, how do I even address him? How do I,
Mr. Martin,
Mr.
please, can we have a story, please, Mr. Martin? Yeah, right.
Yeah, that was exactly my tone of voice. Yeah, I mean, how do I even like ask him about it in a way that he would agree to it?
Yeah.
And I will never read those emails again because I'd probably cringe. But apparently, it's successful. But yeah,
Yeah.
of course, imposter syndrome all the time, all the time. Is this? You're not even just, am I worthy of being here? Because I know that I am, but it's usually about what I'm writing now. Is this good enough? Will this someone think it's crap? Does this work? Does this work? Does this read well? Does this all mash up? Is this logical? Like, that's constant. The anxiety about that I don't think is will go away. I admire someone that could just sit down and create stupidly. And I know people who do. They just sit down and they just create stupidly. Whatever comes to mind just comes to mind, and just put it out there. And I'm like, and if you have any pressure, feeling any pressure, you're doing it wrong. And I'm like, okay, that's most people, I think, but I guess it's kind of envy that, but at the same time I don't, because I feel that pressure, sometimes I do push myself to make it extra, give it an extra sharpness, an extra shine.
Yeah. Um, that kind of making me think how when you're, going through and writing a book like Wolfskin, at what point do you say, okay, this is done, versus I think I can do a little bit better. I think I can do a little bit better before I get it to the editor. I think there's one more pass with this, like,
Yeah. Never. Never.
yeah.
Honestly, you're never. It's just the same thing as starting to write. You're never ready to start writing. You can do world building for 20 years before you can never do a word. You can go. I could go back 20 more times and read the book, and I won't because it'd make me. I'd want to jump off a cliff if I had to go through that book one more time for typos. Basically, it's. I think when it's time to when it's done, it's a little bit easier. Basically, do it until you'd rather keep editing it until you'd rather do anything else in the world, then do it one more time, and then it's done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's how you do it. But at the same time, yeah, there's always improvements. There's always words you can replace. There's always better metaphors you can use. Like I don't think there's a single writer in the world that couldn't go back would say, oh yeah, every word is pristine and perfect, right? Doesn't mean I want to go back and change it, but I don't think that but I don't really think that there's any, and I don't think there's too much value in me going back. But it is, it's yeah, I would keep going back if I could, but I'm glad I can't.
Plus, like you just get diminishing returns, and you gotta recognize that as a writer. Because I see a lot of people make just what, in my opinion, is the biggest mistake in writing, where they never publish because they keep going back and editing. And ideally, you finish the manuscript, you read through it and edit, I don't know, 15, 20% or whatever. Read through it again, you do 10. And then if you do it more time, you're just getting 5%, 1%, to the point where it's not worth the effort at all.
Well, it depends though on what you're editing, because editing is not moving paragraphs around, moving commas and punctuation. Sometimes editing can be your book starts 3 chapters too early or too
Well, I
late.
think that whole thing is editing. That's developmental, line, copy, all of it.
Yeah, but that's what
Yep.
I'm saying. But you would do developmental and then copy and then line. That's 3 rounds already. So I would say you would need to do more. I would ideally you'd want to do more than just 3 rounds. I mean, once you've just finished like a first draft, personally. But I mean, it depends on the length of the project. It depends the type of project. It depends on if it's a sequel or not.
I would
Yeah.
love to ask more people that because I think I disagree with you, respectfully, of course.
Okay, that's
But I
fine.
don't think you need to do like five. That seems too much.
Doesn't no. Every edit is different. One of your edits can literally just be spell check. It depends what you're talking about. Not everyone needs 5 passes. Not everyone needs not three. Every book is totally different. Every book that I've worked on has been, the one that I handed in and the one that it ended up being was had different degrees of difference. The first book, the one that I sold of Stormblood, quite a bit of it changed. Like I had flashbacks and everything in the one to Stormblood, but Wolfskin didn't have and Wolfskin didn't have as much change. It had a lot that was cut, but nothing fundamentally changed about it. So it just depends.
Yeah,
That's kind
Nicholas,
of
I would love to see the numbers on this, like on the
sure.
Discord. Let's ask. Let's do the question of the day.
Okay.
Like, how many edits do you do? Because
We
So
could
Jeremy might be
fucking do
totally
that
right, and
tomorrow.
I could be totally wrong.
it depends on what you consider
100%.
edits. Because
Well,
that's the
And I
question you
just
have to
don't
ask
think
people.
that's like the average, right? There's no way.
Hmm?
I
yeah,
would
I
love
think
to
it.
see the average.
I think it. But I mean, I feel like average will be like a skewed because I think like there's such a range, right? There's like the sort of Royal Road type writers that
Yeah.
are putting their first draft on Patreon, editing a little bit, putting their second draft on Royal Road, and then maybe it gets more rounds before it gets to Amazon, maybe. But
We
then
can get
there's
median. We can do all sorts of stuff. I took college
right,
statistics.
right,
I got a
I
D
mean,
in it, but I took it.
it depends on
yeah.
how long the person's been writing for and what sort of brain they have. I have ADHD. I would very much hope to never put my first draft of anything online. It's
Right,
in the editing, man. It's in the editing.
right.
It's
What what is your kind of to that point? What would you consider like a full edit or full editing pass that you've done that's like the most nuanced? Like because I can think of I want to go through at some point and do a what I would consider like an editing pass on my work just to look at like the dialogue of like a particular character to make sure I'm being consistent with this person's like speaking conventions. You know?
and like it's You mean in terms of the most precise I've been, or the most overall, like most radical change?
No, 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 not so much radical change. More like, yeah, more precise and more like
Okay.
surgical, and nuanced and like, wow, I'm
Um,
gonna look at this really specific thing across the whole book. But to me, that's an editing pass.
yeah, fair enough. I think I changed with my editor in the first book. I changed the main character's motivations to it's hard to do without spoilers. So, but I guess it's not really a spoiler, but basically, in the first book, he finds out, the main character is a soldier, goes to war, fight this evil empire, Star Wars-esque empire, comes back, is full of this alien drug in him that makes him addicted
Hmm.
to this violence. Then he gets a call. Turns out his squad mates are being murdered, and that his younger brother, his strange younger brother, is a prime suspect. And so it becomes a basically torn between the two. Do I, do right by my flesh and blood family who doesn't want a bar of me, or do I do right by these? They're not my flesh and blood, but they're my family. They're my brothers. They got me through hell. Who do I? What do I do about this? And initially, it was much more focused on the brother, his relationship with his brother and the dichotomy there. It was less about him feeling that other pull towards the his former squad mates and his fellow soldiers and what had happened to them, and now the fact that they were dead, right? He also feels an emotional weight and an emotional tug there, and that's what drives him too. That wasn't in the original draft that I sold. It was primarily about the feelings towards his brother. It was a lot more glossed over about how he's feeling, the anger and feelings of injustice about what's getting done to his fellow soldiers. So that was very precise. It's only a paragraph or two, or even like a sentence, but it made a huge difference.
Yeah,
But I had to
yeah,
go through, especially in the first three chapters.
nice. No, I could see how that. Yeah, like just a few drops would be so impactful there, and add so much more like emotional conflict. I like that. I like that. All right, ZB Steele, brother of Danielle Steele. Let's drop a game of wavelength, sir.
Let's
All
do it.
right. So, Jeremy, the way that this game works, and for anyone in the audience who has never seen this before, you're going to think of a number 1 through 10, and then I'm going to ask you 4 questions that have a scale through 1 through 10. And instead of giving me your number, you're going to give me an answer that correlates with the scale. For example, this one might not work super well for you, but the one example I always give people is give me a U.S. state based on how pretty it is. So if your number is 3, you might say like Alabama or Mississippi or something. If your number is 5, you might say, I don't know, like Florida. And if it's 10, you might say like Hawaii or Colorado or North Carolina or something like that, right? So
Okay.
Nicholas and I are going to close our eyes and you're going to flash a number on the screen. You're going to go like 4 or 5 or 8 or whatever number you pick, 1 through 10. So you just tell us when we're good to look.
Yep, you're good.
All
All
right,
right. So on a
all right.
scale of 1 through 10, with 1 being pure sci-fi, 10 being pure fantasy, and 5 somewhere in the middle with a sci-fantasy, give me a book, just based on how sci-fi, how sci-fantasy it is.
Man,
Red
that's so
Rising.
subjective. Ooh, okay.
Now, I never
So we're
read Red
around the
Rising.
middle.
I never read that. So Nicholas, I'm relying on you here.
I think we're around the middle. I don't. I feel like that one's not like a Project Hail Mary hard sci-fi, but it's also not a Lord of the Rings
Do I tell you? When do I
fantasy.
No,
reveal?
we
When
have
do I
4
No, no,
questions.
no, no, no. We
Well,
got a couple
because
more questions. We're trying to narrow it down here.
yeah, I
Yeah,
think it's more like a 3. From what I know about Red Rising, there's like no fantasy or very little. But we'll figure that out.
yeah.
Jeremy, give
What
me
a
an
good
author
poker
based on
face he
how big
had. Look
they
at this
are.
man.
With
Look
10
at Szal.
being the Sandersons and 1 being the Nicholas Fullers.
What is the? I missed the question.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm sorry.
Give me an author based on how big they are, like how famous.
Oh, yeah.
Gosh. So number one is Sanderson.
10 is Sanderson.
Tennyson. Yeah,
Sanderson. Yeah.
pretty big.
Gosh. I'm trying to think. Jonathan French.
We're around that 2 or 3 range because I don't know who that is. What did he write?
Grey Bastards.
Gotcha. That, yep. All right, so 3 or 4. All right, and then give me a video game based on how much you like it.
10 being I like it a lot.
10 being your favorite, you love it, you know.
10 being its Mass Effect that influenced your stories, right?
Assassin's
Yeah.
Creed.
Ooh,
For the
okay.
first one?
Um, Probably Revolutions.
Oh,
Actually, no. The one that's set in America, the one that's set in Boston or whatever.
that's 3.
Okay, the
Oh,
three.
this is low. This is real low. And then give me a Star Wars character based on how dangerous they are, with 5 being like the average stormtrooper.
And 10 is the most dangerous.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Greedo.
Yeah, we're a 2 or a 3 here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna lock in that 3. Nicholas, what do you think?
I have to remind myself of Greedo.
We
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
Red
Uh,
Rising for sci fantasy.
you think 3?
We had Jonathan French for an author based on how big they are. He did win
Yeah.
Spiffbo, I think. So keep that in mind. Assassin's Creed 3,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then Greedo.
I'm gonna give it a 4. I'm gonna go with. So I'm gonna like tread close to the middle there. We'll see. All right. So you locked
Yeah,
in
you
at
got
3,
it,
ZB.
Nicholas is a 4. Yeah.
Suck it, ZB.
Yeah.
Jeremy, I love you. I think you're dead wrong.
I've never liked Assassin's Creed. I've never liked Assassin's Creed that much. Never got into it, but they're not
Yep.
terrible.
And 3
So
is one of the worst ones.
I played 3. I didn't like it. Any of them, the ones I played.
Giving it a 4. Oh my god.
Man.
That hurts me, sir. That hurts me deeply. All right, Jeremy, I do have a question about something you mentioned. You said that you could kind of tell when you were getting good at writing. Do you think there's an objective measure, or do you think it has to be validated by somebody else? Or how would someone who's just getting started be able to tell if they're good?
That's incredibly hard to answer because what is good depends on the person, and it depends on the reception that they may or may not get. I think that I knew that I was getting better because I knew that I would be listening to, I would listening to about the storycraft, I'd listen to writing excuses, and I'd know, okay, this is what you need to do in order to make this work, and this is how achieving this, if this is your goal, these are the things that will help you do it. And so as I would be I would be a lot more aware of the tropes and the story arcs, and so then I could see them in my own work and I could see how they were hitting, and then I would recognize those patterns in other works of fiction, and so that's how I knew what I was doing was working. Before I would just be, writing whatever came to mind, and I was like, yeah, okay, that's a story, that's what it is. But after that, I would be making very concrete, very definitive, deliberate plans to write very specific things and have a very specific result. And I could see that the come in sequence. Um, but yeah, as someone for starting out, I think it's really hard, and it's very hard also as well to be prescriptive about this because writing is so subjective. And I think that you can't really know until you put it online or even ask beta readers for feedback. And you can think it's the greatest thing ever, and someone comes and says, "Yeah, please don't send this to anyone." Or you can think, it's not that good, and you send it to your first few agents, and the first one who gets back to you says, "Oh my God, have you not published yet? Been picked up yet? Give this to me. Put it in my veins." Yeah, it's and but more likely you'll be on the spectrum, somewhere in the bell curve spectrum between the two. But yeah, I think it is very very tricky. But in terms of what I did and the way that I saw other people improving as they submitted to me over the years, and there are some people who submitted a dozen stories to me before I picked them up or I reprinted them, is that yes, seeing how much like the level of craft and level of precision that is in their work.
Love it. You mentioned writing excuses just now, so I've got to ask, who's your favorite writing excuses host? And follow up, why is it Mary Robinette Kowal?
Yeah,
Just
she's
kidding.
good. That woman will set you on fire. She is a delight. She
She's
was making
my
cocktails at
favorite.
Seattle, making cocktails for all of us.
Ah,
then
Yes,
riding
yes,
Christmas
yes,
party.
yes, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was so sweet because she forgot instead of she put like had to replace something else with simple syrup, so they were so sweet. And I was like, man, I know that you Americans love sugar, but my God, this I
Mhm.
feel like I'm getting diabetes just from smelling this. No, it was yeah, she's great fun.
Yeah.
It was always funny watching Brandon on his little you know, his very elegant soliloquies, and then Dan Wells is butting in with these little comments with sniper precision. But Mary's great. Mary's great fun.
I am disappointed Dan is like kind of dropping out. I mean, I get it, and go do your thing, Dan. But like, I'm gonna miss Dan, but that's okay. All right. So I've got a couple kind of broader questions. I think maybe ZB does too, and then I really want to dive in with Wolfskin a little bit. All right. Let me start with this one. You, Sir Jeremy, have seen the industry from many different angles. You're, of course, a novelist. You've been a short story writer. You've been the podcast editor. You've even done some short film producing, which is cool and a different kind of storytelling. Badass. Uh, where do you think the biggest bottleneck is for new writers right now trying to break in?
Bottleneck in what sense?
The like gatekeeping, the biggest area where people drop off and don't make it and have trouble breaking in.
I think they will finish and they'll never start a novel to start with, or they'll never finish it. But I think as well they'll write something that's good but not quite there, and they'll send it out, and then they'll get roundly rejected, and or rejected, and then they'll just say stuff it. Either they'll get dejected and feel don't want they continue, or they say stuff it. The industry's wrong, and they'll continue to push it harder, or they'll pick or something like that. And I think that there's quite a few writers who do that. And if some people might give me a few questioning looks at this. Does this really happen? I've had enough people respond rudely to rejection letters to know how well some people take rejection, and I know the ones who have, who has improved over the years and who's come back better as well, to know what to recognize some of these patterns. And yeah, I do feel that there's a lot of people who will write one story or one novel, and we'll send it out there, and it's not quite there yet, but then they'll just give up and walk away. And it's the ones who are persistent, who are stubborn, who keep taking another run at the walls. Those are the ones who ultimately succeed. Because I wrote, I think, 2 or 3 novels before I even got an agent. They weren't good. They weren't that good. They weren't even like they weren't worth being published. Like I'm surprised they weren't that good, and I just had to go back again.
But to be fair, the first novel that you wrote when you were what, like 18? Because you started, didn't you say you started like a novel before you really kind of started doing shorts?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I did two actually. I wrote 2 short stories before I got into 2 novels before I got into short stories. Then I was writing a novel during that time, but I never queried it because I thought I hated it by the end. I thought it was trash. And then I wrote what became the novel that got me the agent. But so I've written quite a few. But the third I only queried 3, and the third one got me the agent. But the other two they weren't worth good enough to be published.
Well, I
And
think there's not too many people that do write their first good enough to be published novel when
no,
they're still a freaking teenager. I think
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's rarefied air.
The Really quick, I just want to do one quick follow up, CB. But like, you have that interesting perspective, Jeremy, of being the editor with the podcast. When you had that writer that you would reject, but then you would see them come back another time later, and their next work was better, would you be a little bit more receptive to it, kind of having had that history, or would you still be like, would you definitely put it on the same level as something cold, or would you be like, you know what, like this dude did improve, like maybe I'll give him through this time?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to really measure because the a lot of the time because I'm not just publishing it for myself. It's publishing it for an audience, and the audience has no idea how many times the person has submitted. So they do need to be able to see. I think I would give them if I saw that they submitted to me again and they looked at the story and it was at the very least better, somewhat better. Doesn't matter if it's a little bit better or hugely improved. If it was a little bit better, sure, I'd give them more attention. It wouldn't make me buy it because like this was actual money that we were giving people. It wouldn't make me buy it, but it would make me pay attention a little bit more attention. And if I'm doing that, then there's a bigger likelihood of me reading it longer and being compelled to take it. I don't think there's anything that would, a story that isn't worth buying, that I didn't think was worth buying, I wouldn't buy. It doesn't matter how many times a person's admitted to me, but I would certainly pay attention if they kept submitting and produced something that I thought was good. I would definitely pay more attention.
Yeah.
Here's a
Cool.
quote that I like in this kind of realm of it takes 8 years to become an overnight success. And I
Hmm.
think that is just so true.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you just even Game of Thrones, the first season didn't do too well. I mean, even the books didn't do the books like I think it was only the fourth book that was the best that hit the New York Times bestseller list. So, and that was of 10 years after the first book was published. Even the first season didn't take off immediately, not straight away. It was like by the time the second season rolled around that it really became a big thing.
Yeah,
So
Sun Eater either was canceled or was about to be canceled.
no, it was canceled by
Yeah,
multiple publishers on both
that
sides of the Atlantic. Yeah.
yeah, which is crazy.
So
That's one of the greatest sci fantasy series
Whoops.
of all time.
yeah, yeah, I love Chris Rakusha. I love his work as well.
Oh, he's amazing. All right, so this question's kind of a little bit related to Nicholas's, but so you've been around a lot. You see the industry from a lot of different angles, both like on this kind of editor side and the writer side. What is the biggest growing trend that you see? And also, is there a trend that you particularly love or particularly hate?
All right, so I really love that we're seeing a lot more diverse voices. I really like that we're seeing a lot more perspectives, and they're a lot more open to, cultures that are, that are not basically ye old England. Like we're seeing, we're seeing German writers and South Korean writers and Chinese writers and Spanish writers slowly have their works either translated or published in English, either because of their background or where they're from. And we're also seeing a lot more the locations of what of these places. Like we're seeing fantasies that are inspired by Japan and Indian culture and Sub-Saharan Africa and Incan empires. And even like Eastern Europe and like with The Witcher, stuff like that. The fact that I don't know if The Witcher would have been the success that it has been if it was published a few decades ago, but it's probably one of the biggest fantasy properties in the world, and it's very, very Polish and very Eastern European. And the tropes and about the culture is all over those books and those games. And that's fantastic, and I love that, and I love being part of it. And I'm someone from a mixed race background as well, and I'm neither of my one of my parents is an immigrant, and my other parent came from my grandparents on their side came from the Middle East. So yeah, absolutely. I love the melding pot. The thing that I don't like seeing is the whole thing with romantasy. And I do think that it's given the genre a shot before anyone comes to strangle me with a leather whip and hose.
That does happen in romantic books,
Hold
by
you
the
down
way.
with a high heel boot,
Yeah,
right? No, yeah, yeah.
well, don't threaten me with a good time now. But I just think that we're seeing this trend, and it's given the genre a shot in the arm. And the fact that girls are going flocking to Barnes and Nobles and bookstores and buying books en masse and then having reading clubs, that's fantastic, and I love it. And it's given, it's good for everyone. The problem is that what publishers are doing now is seeing that, and they're seeing the big cartoon dollar signs, and now they want everything romantasy. They'll want something that's just like Fourth Wing, but also different. Thing that you want something that's brand new and fresh and breathtaking, but also
Yeah, sure.
it sticks with the same sort of formula, and yeah, and also if you write in one genre, you shouldn't change because you're this person, never mind that,
Oh, right.
yeah, and all this nonsense like that. And I think it chokes the market, and it's actually shunted a lot of books that would have been published to the side in favor of the 20th book that we've seen that is basically thorns and swords on a cover, and that's pretty much it. And a lot of these books are not doing well, sometimes commercially sure, but critically doing bad poorly. We've seen the cycle before. We saw it with young adult dystopian after The Hunger Games was published. We saw it with vampire fiction after Twilight, and the market became saturated, and they didn't sell, and and it ruined a lot of careers, and the publishing was burned on that genre for several years because of it. And we're going to see it happen with romantasy as well. And if anything, I don't know if the bubble will pop, but it will certainly shrink. And it just does irritate me that it just this is what's in demand, and yet there's so many other different types of books and subgenres that are waiting to be explored. But the publishing industry is so focused on this thing. This isn't against people writing it. This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
against the
Right.
sales teams who are just seeing dollar signs and knowing that at some point it will pop, and yet they just want to keep pushing it, and they're gambling the careers of writers on this.
No, I think that's beautifully said. I do think it's a little underrated how much they have helped publishers and bookstores stay afloat.
Oh
But
yeah,
all the other complaints are totally valid. I'm going to add another one where I think it harms women who don't write romantasy because there's
yes,
these
yeah,
expectations, intentional or not, where it's just this sexist implication that like if you're a lady, there needs to be romance in your book. And
yeah.
the three most underrated grimdarks, I pretty much only read grimdark for the most part. Three most underrated books that I've read critically were by women, and I think that's primarily driven because people expected something else, or it's a boys' club problem, or a combination.
I think you're right, and honestly, Lauren Bucas is probably I think she's the best horror slash crime writer working today. I will read any. I'm a massive fanboy of hers. Like her novel Broken Monsters is like incredible. Like she's had a TV series made for one of her books, and she still hasn't hit peak popularity. I don't think like and as much as she deserves to. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It very much does, and I think if we're on that topic, I think the sort of books that we're seeing now as well, like this books where they're kind of glorifying sexual abuse or glorifying, mistreatment and, and what is it basically like, abuse or kidnapping or rape or, and sexual harassment and that sort of stuff, what, whitewashing it and saying, oh, he just loves it. Oh yeah, this is just a,
He's
he's,
a shadow daddy.
yeah, that sort of
For
stuff. Like, I think that it's a very dangerous like mentality. Like, what are you actually promoting? Because if like I might get burned at the stake for this, but the obsession that some of these people have with reading this stuff, it's like it's a pornography addiction. If nothing else, it's a pornography addiction, and we know what that does to the brain. And if you went to a convention, like there was a story about these romantasy convention where there were some guys who were dressed up as minotaurs or whatever, and they said that they felt like in danger, that they were sexually harassed, they were groped against their will, and stuff like that. And if guys went to a anime or convention, were talking about how much they like, uh, you know, slim anime waifus or whatever of whatever age,
And who
you would,
doesn't? We all have been there.
slam them, and rightfully so, because what are you feeding your mind? What are you promoting? How you're objectifying women? You're using another human being as a fetish. Like and you take transferring that to real life.
Absolutely.
Obviously, this is a very small portion of the genre of any genre, right? I'm a huge anime fan, and I've read, I've got romance in my books for God's sake. But so but it is a concern, like concern. I mean, you see some of these videos, and you're like, what exactly is going on here? And yeah, it is harming women that do it right romance, and I think it's a shame.
And some of those books, you kind of nailed it, are just straight up pornography. Like, I don't know where you call the line between romance, smut, and pornography. Some of those books are straight up porn, and there's no denying that.
Yeah, and if they want to read that, then like, you're an adult, you have your money, whatever. Like, I'm not here to judge, but like, let's not pretend that going online and talking about it, to an audience of like having however many million young girls and boys and whatever is exactly, and promoting it as like the must read of the summer is necessarily a good thing, right?
I mean, you're not wrong, but at the same time, it seemed to work fine for 50 Shades of Grey. That was such a phenomenon, and that was definitely a thing,
I don't think that was
right?
pretending to be anything else, though.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
No, that's fair. That's well, but I mean, they didn't pretend to be something else, but it was like the story of the summer or whatever. You know what I mean? It was the phenomenon story that everyone needs to jump on at the
It
time.
was
You know?
definitely weird. Like, you'd go into a coffee shop at like 9:30 in the morning, and you'd see people reading that. You'd be like, yeah, dude, do that in your bedroom. Don't do that here.
Right, right. Interesting point. I definitely agree with pretty much everything you're saying, and like, and even Brandon Sanderson has made kind of a really similar point in that the industry gets stuck on these things that they think are the sure bets, and when he was trying to break in, he like everyone was like, "This is good, but we want the next George R. R. Martin, not whatever this is, Brandon Sanderson," right? Um, and so that's obviously a mistake of the industry because they're missing out on great things. I do think I disagree with you. And I had a previous conversation where I talked with romantasy author Angela Montoya, and we were talking about that. I asked her, "Is this a bubble?" And she said, "I don't think so." And I kind of agree with her because I think it's an expansion of the market into this thing that was a little bit underserved previously. But I feel like a lot of this, a lot of like millennial women who are the main readers of romantasy are primed for this kind of story. You know, they grew up reading, or not reading but watching, like of course all the like the cartoons, and then they got like Lord of the Rings, and they got Twilight, they got Harry Potter, but now they're a little bit older, they want something a little bit more spicy, a little sexier, a little bit more exciting, and like, but they're ready, they're primed for like a fantasy story, but they're not getting like that sort of uh I mean, I think there's a lot of infatuation in the stories that I've read, but then that's not something that you're going to see in certainly not Lord of the Rings, you
I
know?
will say,
Like,
I don't think that they're committed to romantasy because the combination of
mhm,
romance and fantasy is extremely popular right now and all that.
mhm,
I think if the niche becomes and the bubble pops, romance will stick for sure.
of
But it
course.
could be
Like,
mafia
romance is not
romance. I
going
see that
anywhere.
coming up. It could be like Jeremy said, the kind of darker shadow daddy stuff, but just like more urban, not fantasy, but like real life stalkers. I don't think that they'll necessarily have the loyalty to the fantasy aspect that they will to the romance aspect.
Possibly not. No. I mean, yeah, it's hard. We won't know until it actually happens. But although, yeah, but I think you will see some readers who would, who start on romantasy will then shift to other books for sure. Other
We're
types of
three
books.
dudes talking about the wants of women, so we gotta come in with confidence.
Yeah, that is true.
We'll
Yeah,
tell them
yeah,
what they want, you know?
yeah,
That's
yeah. Of
fair.
course, no one's, no anyone should be able to read what they want and do what they want and write what they want. Well, I think we're just talking about the impact that this is happening on the market and what the market is doing to then subsequently doing to
Right.
readers and to new writers.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the way the industry is like chasing what it sees as like a quick, easy, guaranteed buck, and it's sort of edging out like other good stuff. Yeah, but another point that you made that I think is fascinating though is the way the industry and I mean the big publishers. This is not true with indie. With indie, you could go publish whatever you want, but with the big publishers, they view a writer as in this specific lane, this specific genre, these types of stories, and it's very difficult to convince your publisher to give you a shot with something different, right? Um, I think that was kind of a point that you were saying, Jeremy, right? Um, but I find that interesting, like, because it seems like that's something that you're against, right? Which I understand, but I sort of understand why that's a thing, and I think that like trying to do something else sort of fights reader expectations a little bit, and I wonder like what you think about threading that needle with like reader expectations
look,
for stories from the same author, you know?
yeah. Look, I think like honestly, you have to remember these people are still in the same bookstores, right? And in some countries, like in Australia, we don't have fantasy and science fiction shelved differently. They're shelved together, right? So they're sitting right next to each other. And honestly, a name, there are plenty of, if my favorite fantasy author like Nicholas Eames or someone like that wrote a sci-fi book, I'd go pick it up immediately because I
Yeah,
recognize the name, right? I don't
fair.
really necessarily think that that's true. And you have writers who are writing in both or writing books that are both. Like, they'll say, oh, well, Sun Eater is science fiction, and that's it. But they're assuming that the same people who are reading Arthur C. Clarke and reading Asimov and reading Heinlein and reading Project Hail Mary are then, going to Sun Eater because it's both set in space. They're totally different tonally.
Right.
The writing style is different. The level of technology, like, it's all the essence, the ethos of Sun Eater is fantasy. It just happens to be in a sci-fi backdrop. It's the same with Red Rising. It's the same with my feel like, especially my books. I think that books 2 and 3 get much more space opera and a lot more expansive, especially the third book. Like it has, houses and and nomadic factions of spacefaring peoples, and that's and multi-species factions and that sort of stuff. It's and weird alien stuff that is unexplainable by science. Like it's straight up almost basically magic, right? But no, because it is in space, it is science fiction. And that is absolutely it's the height of lunacy, especially asking someone to go and write the same thing for 20, 30, 50 years because, well, that's what you uh, when I'm changing lanes as I see fit, and I was worried about it for quite some time, especially with what I was told. But ultimately, I spoke to a few people, and I really got my head in gear about it, and I just realized, actually, no, I'm not going to be doing this. I'm going to write what I want because it has to please me first, not what the corporate people in this on the sales team think will make them $10 more. Sorry, I'm not sacrificing my happiness and my work for that. Like, I was so stressed about it that I got for adrenal fatigue last year. It was really,
Oof.
yeah, it was bad. So perhaps if it's between that and making the salespeople happy for like 2 minutes more, or
Yeah.
doing what I want, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
sorry, not really much of a choice, is there? But no,
Right. Right.
so yeah, so I write what I want, and I'm gonna find a way to publish it one way or another. And I think that you do see people publishing in both genres or ship genres more interchangeably these days than you did, and I think that that's a good thing. Like Agent Tchaikovsky, and I have a friend of mine, Wule Talibi. He debuted with a fantasy book, but he's just sold a science fiction book that's coming out with Door later this year. Lauren Bucher started with, near future cyberpunk sort of adjacent stories. Then she moved into horror, and now she's done a time travel novel. Yeah, yeah, and under the same name as well. So yeah.
See that's the kind of thing. Yeah, because to me, like fantasy and sci-fi, I'm with you there. Like I feel like they're like two sides of the same coin. It's
Oh,
this. It's yeah.
100%. It's tone
Right.
that matters. It's tone and voice that is the define. I mean, you can have a fantasy book like Joe Abercrombie stuff is sure it's fantasy, but it's dark and it's gritty and it's so introspective. There's nothing grandiose and world building, about Abercrombie's work. I mean, even he says that world building is not something that he personally likes doing too much. Sure, there are swords and magic, but it's totally different from Sanderson's work. Totally different.
Yeah.
Right.
So then let
But
me
then, like,
reframe Nicholas's
if
question.
like Andy Weir wrote a horror, and I picked up on the strength of like I like Andy Weir books, I'd be like, "Ooh, this is not what I thought I was gonna get." You
Yeah, I
know?
mean, Andy writes a very, very specific sort of thing. I think,
Right.
he's known for that, and he's the height of his popularity has made him that as well. Like he's known as the Martian guy, the science guy. Yeah, I think it depends as well. It depends. Every writer is different. It depends on the writer as well.
So then I want to reframe Nicholas's question just a little bit because we're kind of splitting hairs, in my opinion, on this, where we're talking about the speculative genre and switching between that. Because really, a lot of horror, sci-fi, and fantasy fans are going to be the same thing. Do you think it's possible, a good idea, whatever you want to phrase it as, to go from speculative fiction to not speculative fiction?
Yeah, see that I think would be harder, but I don't really see many people doing that. To be fair,
I
I
can't think
can't
of
Well,
think
yeah.
of.
I mean, like I feel like there's wouldn't be a lot of writers that would want to. You know what I
No,
mean? Because
no.
like if you like spec fic, you're not gonna be like, well, it's time for that literary fiction. I've always been. If you write spec fic, then you're of the mindset of Sanderson, where it's like literary fiction is boring people doing boring things. Whereas spec fic is I can do anything I want, but I can also include dragons. You know?
I know
Right?
Miles Cameron shifted from historical to fantasy. That he also shifts between fantasy and science fiction like nobody's business, and good on him. But yeah, and I know he had trouble with moving from historical to spec fic, but I don't. But yeah, I don't see many people moving out of spec fic. Not really.
Yeah. All right. Jerry, I have a quick question for you, and you're going to hate this. But besides Garrus, who is the greatest Mass Effect character to have in the party?
Oh, that's hard. Are you talking about the original trilogy or Andromeda,
The
including
original trilogy,
Andromeda?
yeah.
Rex is always fun because who doesn't like a Krogan around?
Got it.
Thane's pretty fun, although he's a little bit. But I don't think he's great for a party. I think you've got to go with the Krogan. Go with the Krogan. Yeah, he'll drink me under the table. So yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, no, that's what I would have picked. That's a great pick. Not Ashley.
Nice. No, actually. All right, Wolfskin. Let's talk about it. So I was hearing more about Wolfskin and the Common Trilogy, and I'm like, God damn, this sounds fucking badass. I got to get on this shit. Like, so you've got this. Well, I want to hear your pitch, but the way that I was, hearing what you were talking about, this gothic space opera where there's stories on the like intergalactic warfare, which is love me some big scale battles, but then a lot of the story is very personal. You mentioned earlier how like the main character is struggling with this conflict between his brother, but then trying to you know uh what's the fucking word I'm looking for? Exonerate his brother, I think.
Yeah, redeem.
Would condemn his brothers in arms,
Yeah,
yeah, which is like I love that. And then there's this storm tech drug that he's been injected with, and I'm not even sure if he consented to it exactly, but like now that it's in his body, it's defined, it will redefine like the rest of his life because it's altered everything. Like everything going on in here, I'm like, give me more. Give me more. Hum, nom, nom. Give me the popcorn. This is fucking
drug.
fantastic. Like,
Yeah, that's very
so,
much what it is. Yeah, yeah. You got it in a nutshell.
all right. Well, you don't have to pitch it now. I did for you. No.
More than happy to do it.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
I think I said it earlier that it's basically crossroads between Mass Effect and Red Rising, bit of Altered Carbon and a bit of Star Wars Andor as well. Yeah, the main character, he was injected with this drug, and his brother, he went off to war, and his brother doesn't like that because they only survived on this backwater planet they grew up on because they had each other. They survived an abusive father. There were, yakuza and mafia all around them, and that sort of stuff. And they only managed to hold on and survive this terrible childhood they had because of their integrity and their love for each other and what they did for each other. But when the opportunity to flee and an exit route presented itself, the younger brother Artyom, his body didn't tolerate storm tech; it couldn't take it. But the older
Oh,
brothers could, so he had to leave him behind. And he did made the choice to not stay behind. He made the choice to go to war and left him, like he literally went to a war instead of staying with his younger brother. And he's resented him for it because of everything that's happened since, and the
sure.
abusive father that they had and the mental health struggles that his brother had. Like one of the first times he sees his brother again after like 5 years, and he sees all the wounds on his arms and stuff, like self-inflicted wounds on his arms, and he knows that it happened because he wasn't there to help him stop it. And now his brother doesn't want to barf him, and he's wondering, okay, now my brother's doing all this likely doing all this terrible stuff. Where did I go wrong? Did it happen because of me? Is there anything worth redeeming? And even if I do redeem him, does he even want to be redeemed? Does he even want me? How do I deal with this regret? And it's all these interpersonal feelings that come up, amongst all the flying bullets and all the alien drugs and the broader conspiracy. But the books, obviously they move past that. You find out what's going on pretty early into the first book. It's less about who's doing it and it's more about why. And then, as the truth comes on, you realize that there's another war that's brewing in the background. And by the time book three, Wolfskin rolls around, we're in the middle of an intergalactic war, basically, with dozens of species and thousands upon thousands of spaceships all involved and millions of people and all these other factions vying for power. So the screen, grows really wide. And yet it never loses sight of that personal connection and personal relationship. And in each book, the relationship between the brothers shifts and changes. So it's never the same. Like it always progresses in some radical way.
The hell of a fetch.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
it's like someone wrote that book just for me.
That guy is dapper and good looking and great to talk to. Yeah. That's yeah, again, I love this concept. I like the idea of the storm tech too. The drug. I think that's really cool. I'm doing something a little similar in a story I'm writing, but I got my own flavor. But I really like the way that you've done yours, where it's this drug that affects the person forever. And I'd love to hear more about like the effects it has on the person, but also it's actually not just a drug. It's actually like an entire alien species that's bringing into your body. That part, like, I don't know that I would have thought about it like as a drug, but then wait a minute, actually, that's a cool angle you got going on.
and let's just say that the aliens are extinct. They perhaps are not so extinct, and they're perhaps not so friendly. So
Yeah,
things get wild and crazy. So yeah.
I love it. So tell us about like yeah the way that the drug the yeah, affects the characters long term. What is it like? How does it affect not only themselves but their interactions with the rest of the world after they get injected with this storm
So
tech?
it makes basically rewires the nervous system and to crave a release and crave an adrenaline rush. And to get that, they have to do something radical and extreme and dangerous. For example, there's a line I think early on that the main character he says that he's looking at someone holding a knife or whatever, a blade, and he actually tear his eyes away from it because he's like, "There's no such thing as a fantasy for me. If I think about snatching it up and putting it in someone's throat for long enough, I will do it. My body will compel me, will scream at me to do this, and so I have to lock it down. But in locking it down, the force of it also makes me bottle it all up. So I need to get do it in some way. And so he starts off the book by being a smuggler and going after some very dangerous people and breaking into the homes and taking their stuff because that's how he gets the adrenaline rush. That's how his body craves and desires and needs, and he can't function without it, without this. And so it also, make changes mood swings. It makes you, more vulnerable to mental health issues. It makes your body more susceptible to everything. It means that you can't get drunk anymore because it nullifies alcohol. It means that you have twice the appetite of someone who with twice the appetite of someone without it. It means that basically all these things like I guess what I wanted to do was I wanted to show the impact that it had on society and the personal on every single level, the physiologically speaking and personality speaking. And then, it also changes like personality, like it obviously makes you a lot more angry and frustrated and, fires up all those negative emotions, fiery emotions, because it wants to get a reaction from you and it wants to get it from the people around you. And it also means that, yeah, if the main character, if there's a gunfight going on, he'll be part of it. If he doesn't start it, or if there's a bar brawl, he will start one just for hell of it because not because he wants to, but because his body desires to. So it becomes this conversation, I guess. Basically, it's nature versus nurture. Am I this way? Am I a man of violence? Am I a man who's good at killing and good at hurting people because it was always in me? And the storm tech helped just bring it out, and it's an excuse I tell, or did it really change me into a different person? Has it really corrupted? Is it this parasitic drug really corrupted me to this level? Both of those things are terrifying in their own way. And so it becomes this question that is grappled with, and how do you deal with it? How do you compartmentalize this? And that's and that's actually what Wolfskin is. Not just the book title, like the meaning of the word, and it is you find out what the meaning of the word is in the third book. Every single book, the title, it's echoed within the book, and it has a significant meaning. And yeah, so it's Stormblood is not necessarily referring to Storm Tech. That's yeah, just have to read it to find out what it is.
Yeah, once
I don't
again,
know when.
oh, bitch, I love the philosophy angles. Like you'd already kind of talked about it a little bit with the moral struggle of like condemning your brother versus your war brothers. This is a fucking excellent pitch. So where can we buy your stuff?
Well, CP, you can buy it anywhere. You can, yeah, basically in the traditionally published, and so you can buy them wide ebook, audiobook, and paperback. The third book is not coming out in paperback until the I think the January 2027. But the first two are in, the first two, Blind Space and Wolfskin, they're in bookstores around the world, including the US/Canada, so they can be ordered from Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, wherever. Yeah, easily done. And I'm trying to make the audiobook for the third book happen as well. So yeah, they are everywhere.
Well, I guess I'm going to the bookstore tomorrow.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Right? No, yeah, I already bought the first one on Kindle when I was prepping and I'm like, I need this. I need this.
You
Yeah.
do. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like right, you do need it.
Yeah, right. So, all right, Wolfskin is the last in the trilogy, right? So there is also like I think a companion novella, right?
Yeah, Scream and Blue. Yeah, yeah. Basically, it's a sort of prequel, different cast of characters, and it's set on Earth. And you don't need it's a standalone, so you don't need it. to see what's going on in Stormblood. But if you read it, I think after possibly, like it will help. It will illuminate things like, oh, that's the connection there. That's how this happened. But they can be both read in isolation of each other. And if you
Nice.
go to my newsletter and sign up, I'll give it to you for free because I love you that much.
Me? Me?
Oh,
Nice.
I'm
Nice.
gonna
Nice.
put
All
that
right.
as
All
like a
right.
book blurb. It's just like Jeremy loves me.
Yeah. Right. That's going on my website. That's yep. Yep. I like it. All right. So as you were crafting this, two questions. One, uh again, we finished the trilogy now. Did the ending that you've got now, the ending for the entire trilogy, was it, now that you've gotten there, was it the same as what you originally conceived, or had it evolved over time? And then, second question, again, now that you're done with all this, was there ever a moment as you're going through creating this entire trilogy where you're like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm not sure if I can get this concept done the way I had in mind, you know?
Yeah, I definitely, there were times where I was like, I don't know if I can pull this off. I don't know if I can make this work. And yeah, significant times, especially in book two, because I was like writing this, I've never had a publishing contract before. I was still in my early 20s. I wrote the first book for fun in my room, on my days off, and now I've got this, the book is, I owe a publisher this book, and I've got to deliver it, and there'll be readers, and so that's a very different thing, a very difficult thing. And yeah, it was quite tricky. I did manage it in the end, and I had a great deal of help from my editor and from the people around me who gave me these pep talks when I needed them. The
Thanks,
ending,
Mom.
yeah, thanks, Mum. And thanks, Dad, as well, because my dad went out for beers with me, and we talked about it pretty often, whenever I needed.
Like, I am so jealous. That sounds amazing. Okay.
Yeah, the the ending. Well, I want to, yes and no. There are facets of it that are definitely the way I visioned originally, but at the same time, it did go in different directions, and I was like, okay, I'm not actually. And by the time I rolled around to the end, I'm like, I actually don't really want to do this anymore, or this wouldn't really work. I think broadly it did, but I think it depends as well when I thought about doing it, because I wrote the first book not really knowing what would happen. I didn't even think about that I would get three books out of it. But once I did
Oh,
have the
wow.
third
Okay.
book done, when I had the contract and I was outlining them, I thought, yeah, this would work. I think this would work, and I had the broad picture. But what happened to certain characters or their fates, that was definitely, I think, sometimes a surprise. Even though I was writing book three, there's a fate of one character that I wasn't planning. I didn't plan for this character to be as big as they were at all, let alone the ending that they got. But I've had reviewers tell me that it's the favorite aspect of the trilogy. So I must have done something right. So yeah, a bit of both, bit from A, bit from B.
Nice.
I was stalking you, and I think it was the
Mhm.
Hugos that you went to the other day on Instagram. I was looking through it. Was that right? You were there with Sando, and you took some pictures and
Yeah,
all that.
yeah. I was accepting for Adrian Tchaikovsky, at
Yeah,
the Hughes. Yeah.
that's the coolest shit in the world. Tell me, like, I know we're running out of time here, but yeah, tell me for a minute about that. That's cool as hell.
Well, I mean, I accepted the Hugo for him in China when he won, so either one. But yeah, basically, it was very very cool. I mean, the Hugos were both very different in China and in the States. In the States, I mean, the China were basically treated like celebrities, and everything. But in the States, yeah, I think there were also a lot more people there, but it was also a lot more. We weren't quite as special there, but it is still fun to be part of the proceedings and be invited, and that sort of thing, and get take the photo, even with like Sanderson and everything. And I think I went up to Rebecca Roanhorse. She was also nominated for Best Series and ultimately ended up winning. Where everyone was introducing each other, and I said to her, "Hi, I'm Adrian Tchaikovsky," and she just did a double take, and she's like, and I'm like, "No, I'm accepting for him," and she's like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "Did I get it wrong?" Like, and Scott Lynch was dressing me as Mr. Tchaikovsky, or Mr. Tchaikovsky's manservant the whole evening. I was like, yeah, I'll take that. That's good. He's bringing me champagne, so I'll take that. Um,
Yeah, yeah. You can
yeah,
call me whatever you want.
yeah. In China, basically, yeah. When I accepted for him, I think I had about I think I signed about 700 signatures after that. Like, the day after and straight after, and then the day after when I came back and had to give the Hugo to someone else to hand it over. Like I had like this small cadre of Chinese families chasing me and seeing all that I'm holding it. And so at some point I'm like, you know what? I'll just stand and to sign stuff for people. And then I ended up signing like I think 700 signatures all crowding around. One mom had a issue of one of the magazines and published it in Chinese. She had it and she asked me to sign it to her son who hadn't even been born yet. And the story, I'm like, this is not child appropriate, I don't think, but sure, I'll sign it anyway.
So, but what a cool thing.
Yeah, that was very cool. And yeah, when I was up on the platform, and and the funny thing is that at the Hugo ceremony, the mayor of Chengdu was there because he's a fan of science fiction, and that was why they had so much money get thrown at them because they had some low, people in the party and political figures who really loved the genre and were there. And so going up and giving a speech in front of them, plus 50,000 Chinese people, was intimidating. And I do remember going up and saying, first thing I said was, Adrian told me this wasn't going to happen, and I bet him a beer. And I told him, if it does happen, you owe me a beer. I'm like, Adrian, now you owe me a damn beer. So that was fun. Getting to walk Hugo's for the whole night was also quite fun. It's a bit of controversy with China, ultimately, but I still, still admire Adrian and his books greatly. So yeah, it was just a lovely experience. I was very privileged to be able to have it and represent him there both times in China and in the US.
Sick. I feel like I
Alright,
could
the
definitely
floor
talk
is yours.
about Worldcon for a while because I think it's an awesome con, but I don't want to keep you too long, Jeremy. So let me leave you with this, Jeremy. One more question. If someone is just discovering your work today, where should they start? And what's the one thing that you hope that they would walk away from as they finish some of your pieces? Or I guess the particular starting piece.
Yeah, good wrap up question. Stormblood. I think that would be the best way to start. It's the first book in the trilogy. It's most makes the most sense to start there. And I would hope that they would take away so that they are emotionally moved, that they would see part of their life or things that are close to them in their relationships with other people or the siblings or friends echoed in the characters. And if not, if they could still see, connect empathetically with them on a human level, like fall in love with them, not so much the idea. If they fall in love with the idea, that's great. But if they can connect emotionally with the story and let it move them, then that's all. That's pleases me. That's what I hope they walk away with.
Nice. All right, Jeremy, this has been an absolute blast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank
Obviously, we
you
can
for
pick
having
up
me.
Stormblood everywhere that books are sold. Where can people find and follow you online, please?
They can do so at jeremyzal.com. Very original, yes, I know. I'm also on Substack and both places. Again, if you sign up, you get a free novella. And I'm just at Jeremy Zal at all the usual places, although I'm not on Twitter that often. Sorry, X that often these days. So yeah, you can find me pretty much everywhere.
All right, well, Jeremy, thank you for being here. ZB, thanks for being here also, I guess.
Oh, it was really all for Jeremy. It was not for you.
Yeah, no, understood. And everyone listening and watching, thanks for hanging out. Whatever plot twist life throws your way, remember you are an absolute legend. Read often and nerd out.